We no paycheck for 6 months. I had to sell a pickup truck to buy my kids presents for Christmas when they were like 2 and 4. And it was one of those stories. We were 30 grand in the hole, and payroll, and we spent 5 years wrestling out of that $6 million mountain of debt. When I started, that practice was at $600,000, and we're tracking 20 plus million. I think is a big problem when people don't seek it because they're not humble. I think it's a step on your ego to go somewhere and realize you don't know something. Being coached and learning and growing has enabled me so much freedom and enjoyment in life that I can focus on the things that I really enjoy. Hope somebody listens to this today and can change their career, because I'm telling you, you're just a coach away from it. That's it.
All right, so welcome. So here we are, another episode of the Private Practice Playbook. Just a reminder, we do this in an effort to help doctors that we don't work with maybe gain a perspective that is very difficult to do in their normal day-to-day life. We see that time can pass by very slowly and very quickly all at the same time. And over the years, I meet young, ambitious doctors. I meet older, successful doctors, older doctors whose practices die with them. So today, I'm going to bring in a guest who he's going to talk about his story. And the reason we want to do stories here is not for you to say that doesn't apply to you or for you to mimic exactly what the people do. It's just to give you some perspective. And so these are all real stories of people that have gone through all the trials and tribulations of owning a practice. And obviously, we want to talk a little bit about the good and the bad, but also more importantly, trying to get them to go back and talk about their history and reflect on the progress they've made, because this podcast is really designed to get you to believe that you could do more. There is more you could do. You can help more people. You can employ more people. So really excited today. Gosh, I mean, I see this guest is, we're probably 20 plus years in a relationship with each other. So I've been through a lot. So I have with me Dr. Lance Panarello. So Lance, thank you so much, Dr. Panarello, for taking time to join us.
Much appreciated. So glad to have the opportunity to share a little bit and hopefully make somebody's journey a little easier.
Well, it looks like wherever you are, there's not a snowstorm in the background. So that's good.
Yes, finally. It was rough up here this year. I'm not going to lie.
So, gosh, like I said, I was thinking it's been certainly probably 21, maybe getting close to 22 years since we've known each other, so a long time. Had the privilege of working with you and your team for that long. So, number one, thank you for that. It's been a lot of fun. Dr. Panarello does some coaching for us. So he also helps with coaching various groups and different events we've done. So I really appreciate you doing that. He's probably a coach at heart. That's sort of his go-to thing. So let's dive in a little bit. And so tell him where your flagship practice is. Do you mind?
Yeah, it's perfect. Yeah. Southeast Pennsylvania, in that sort of lower right-hand corner, near a couple miles from Jersey, a couple miles from Delaware. It's a suburb of the city, probably, 20 minutes outside of Philadelphia. Just, I don't know, there's whatever, 15,000 people in a town, I guess, or so, give or take. So that's where we are. It's
So let's roll back. I know you were telling me you're preparing for a high school graduation. We'll get into your kids in a second, but I want to go back and talk about why you became a dentist, right? Tell me,
Yeah.
what was that? What was the moment? What happened?
So very lucky. My father was my idol and hero, and just an enjoyable person to be around. One of the probably more favorite people that anybody would meet. And so I always idolized and admired him. And I worked with him a lot as a kid, not doing dentistry. We used to do a lot of construction and remodel houses and buildings and things. And when it came time, high school was getting close to decide about college. And I said, "Hey, Dad, what do you think I ought to do?" And he looked at me and he said, "Well," and this was late 80s, 1986, say. He said, "I'm doing the same things I've been doing for the last 30 years." He said, "If this profession doesn't evolve, I don't think there's a great future in it."
Mm,
And at the time, he was exactly right because, you know, I remember him reading the instructions, bonding my front tooth when I broke it. So that's like how early this was. And he just said, he goes, I can't make teeth look the way I want. The materials just aren't that great. And he goes, it needs evolving. Thank goodness for dentistry, veneers, whitening, implants, root canals have developed to be so much better. Ceramics, like the whole field did change. And it was super fortunate. But at the time, he was right. And what I realized is I went and volunteered doing physical therapy because that was the other field. And I realized I was too impatient for that. And I wanted to fix things now. And
Yeah.
there's no better profession to fix something right now than dentistry because you can do it immediately and it's terrific. And it helped me realize what was important to me. So that's how I ended up in it. And then I was, of course, lucky enough to work with my hero. So what a gift.
Oh. So your dad was kind of he did the dentistry, but he really futzed around with a lot of different stuff, right? I
Yes.
was having this conversation. I did a podcast with Bob Lather, and he was basically saying my dad was a farmer, and like dentistry was sort of a side gig, but he really liked so same thing, right? Your dad which made you pretty multifaceted, obviously.
Sure, sure. It made me a construction junkie, unfortunately.
Yeah. So okay, so you make that call,
Mhm.
and siblings? How many
Two
siblings?
brothers, two older brothers, 8 and 10-ish years apart.
Okay, and none of them went into dentistry.
They were not much for school.
Gotcha.
Yeah, became owned a real estate company. The other one became a commercial insurance agent.
So you were really kind of your dad's guy.
Yeah, yeah. You
Awesome.
know, yeah, I was lucky. Like I said, he was kind of my idol, and we always just gelled. I just think growing up behind those two, I tried not to give him a hard time because I watched like the challenges he went
Yeah.
through parenting other kids that were older and going through teenage years. So I kind of wanted to make it as easy on him as I could, and I did a reasonably good job of that. I don't.
And how many years did you actually get to practice with your father?
So about eight to all together.
Okay. When did the idea of growing it, really kick in for you? Was that while he was still alive, or was it like, and how did that sort of,
Yeah.
how
So
did how did him being alive versus him passing affect how you saw your stewardship over the practice, right?
So it was kind of neat. The day I started, he's literally like, "Here, you can do all this," and just sort of handed the business side over to me. And when I say I knew zero, I mean I knew zero because I always kind of worked for the family. I never had an official job, so I never had paid taxes or anything.
Right.
I knew zero. So started out that level, and then one of the doctors, he had a professional building that was 3,000 square foot units. So one of them was moving out, and I was like, "Geez, we could
Hmm.
use extra space." I mean, there was me, him, and an associate there, and we were all kind of in one chair, so it wasn't very effective. So took over that middle space, and again the construction there. So started growing it, and he worked with one glove. He didn't really wear both gloves. He only wanted to wear one, and because he wanted his right hand free. So the people that came to see him sort of loved him, and so we kind of put him in his own area away from the
Yeah.
rest of the practice, so he could
Okay.
operate his way and show him the courtesy and respect of his time. And
I like it.
so then we were growing the rest of it sort of around him. And then as I met Dr. Grant after, a few associates, had one that was stealing from him that I had to fire. So that was a bit of a challenge.
Hmm.
And then ended up meeting Dr. Grant, and we were very kindred spirits and really liked to work. And the business was just busting at the seams. So we were trying to remodel and grow and keep up with it. And then my dad kind of saw the writing on the wall that like we were holding him back. He was holding us back by being there. And, we're down at one of your events and saw the dentistry from the heart thing and thought that would be a terrific idea to sort of frame around his retirement. So we sort of tied
Oh,
that all together, and it was a great exit for him. And we're
that's
still,
awesome.
it's actually coming up next week. Actually, we'll be doing another week and a half. We'll be doing another free dentistry day in his honor. So it all kind of worked out well.
So a
Yeah.
day where, for people that don't know, that's a day where he opens up his office. People can come for free. What kind of volume do you have on those days?
Usually get about 100 people in half a day, and or give or take whatever,
Yeah.
however many people there are. And we say one filling, cleaning, or extraction, but like if people have two or three teeth next to one another or only need a couple things, we'll finish them up. So it says on paper one filling or one, extraction, but we most often than not try to do whatever they have to get them finished and help them because we have the space and the people power to get it done.
Yeah, it's funny. Talk about the power of an invitation, right? I mean, that event, I remember that event, and I really challenged everyone to do that. And I mean, a lot of people, I think that was 17, 18 years ago. They've been doing it every year since then, which is just testament to the goodness of their hearts. So
Yeah, it's been great. I think we're over 250,000 in free work so far. So
that's awesome.
yeah,
Well, I love that. What a great way to honor somebody, right?
yeah,
And it's just great for the community.
yep.
So, okay, so all this is happening. You sort of take over, you get going. You got a young family at this point, right? You're like newly married, right? So I mean, if you think about whatever this 20 years, right? So you've gone from just having kids to kids graduating high school off to college, right? How did you feel? Like, I mean, I know we always talk about like, hey, create some etched memories with them. They're going to go. It seems like you've done a really good job of being able to stay active in their lives. And how important was that for you?
I'm going to give you the credit here. It was probably the greatest piece of advice you ever gave me. Well, besides the dollar value, that's the most valuable piece of advice you ever gave me was to spend the time and be intentional about my time with my kids from the time they were little
That's
until
awesome.
they leave. Because if I didn't, they weren't going to want to spend time with me because as they got older, they're going to get into other things. And if I don't spend the time now, and I didn't have to be at everything, that's not really what it was. It was
Yeah.
just when you were there, be part of their lives, just be involved in what they're doing. And I was fortunate enough to coach most of their sports. And being I'm going on a 30-year high school volunteer football coach. I was lucky enough to learn from older coaches how to coach my own kids and not mess
Yeah.
that up
That's
because
awesome.
man, is that easy to do. And just your kid's sports journey in general is easy to mess up. So I was lucky and I really, I
Awesome.
got to spend 4 hours a day with my kids playing a sport like for
Yeah.
years. And it was just the laughs and the fun and the memories and their friends. And it was all worth it. And it was so great to watch that all transpire. And man, my heart is breaking that I'm at the end of it. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
I'm,
Well, it's a new era, right?
it will,
But
but I'm sad to see it go because I enjoyed it so much.
yeah. Well, I just want everyone to kind of understand, every story has some different nuances. And like Lance said, he's been coaching football for 30 years, different ages. And I think everybody, a lot of people have a family, a lot of people have other interests. And so, how you can figure out how to have a successful business and still do those things at the same time is one of the things I hope you guys extract from, right, Lance's story. You're a hardworking person, right? That's what your dad gave you, I'm assuming.
Yes, 100%. We worked every weekend from the time I was a teenager all the way through dental school. I worked all the way through dental school,
Right.
college, everything, every Saturday, Sunday, pretty much 95%. So yeah, he just always was doing something, and
That's a hard work ethic to pass along, isn't it?
it
You
is.
try. It's like, ooh, you go, huh?
Yeah, it's a lot of lessons learned, whether
Yeah.
it's a blessing and a curse, let's say it like that, because it was nothing for me to run a 90-hour week between work and coaching their kids' sports and their games and everything. And I thought nothing of it for 13 years. They're pretty much run a 90-hour week. And, hats off to my wife and all the support because obviously if I didn't have her, it was impossible for it to
Right.
even occur or
And,
remotely
and, and
occur.
she was a teacher, right?
Yep.
And then, yeah. So, and I know that was at some point she stayed home with the kids, right? Which was a
Yep.
big, it's so funny. That's such a big deal, isn't it? It's like, you think back, like, are we really going to do this?
It took her 2 years to unwind from it and accept it. Like she had to go to a part-time thing and then go to a volunteer piece,
Mm,
and because she was not ready to walk out of it. So
yeah.
it was like a 2 year unwinding.
So, can we talk a little bit about your personal production and how important that has been to you, and that you really are kind of like you like that? It's like you're like an athlete with a statistic, and how you have done with, your practice and have you stopped competing with the associates, and when did that happen, right? Or is it still a work in progress?
Yeah, at times, but for the most part, it was a great journey. And I was teaching productivity for the Scheduling Institute and trying to teach the doctors how to become more productive. So I was really focused on how efficient could I be, how much could I get done in a day, a week, a month, and really chased my production up to right on the nose of $4 million in a year. And I realized, okay, there's a limit to what a person
Mm.
can do. I mean, sure, could I have done more? Probably, if I was more efficient
Yeah.
at scheduling, whatever. There was more juice probably to be had, but that's when I had that big realization that I was taking from them, really, not on
Oh,
purpose.
yeah.
Right. And it was, okay, I'm teaching productivity. I need to be really productive. Otherwise, I can't talk about it. I'm not going to be a very good teacher of productivity if I'm not highly productive. And then I realized, well, geez, if I'm going to teach it, I really need to bring them along faster and better.
Yeah.
And I really spent the last 8 to 10 years working on that. And I say it took me 20 some years to figure out how to teach doctors, even though I've been doing it for 20 years. I really learned how to get them to produce, two and three, upwards of $3 million in a year. And I'm way more proud of that than anything that I ever did
That's great.
because they're
That's a
not.
that's a tricky transition. So that for everyone listening to this, right, I don't want to make light of that. It's like when you're a competitor and you're competitive. I mean, and so that transition from, a lot of you might be listening to this and you're in your mind, the only person that could ever see a patient is you in your practice, right? Which is so incorrect, but that's where you are. So I think for you, that was a big step, right? Becoming their teacher, their mentor, guiding them, and almost when you're competing with them, you can do it, but it's more challenging, I guess.
And I think that's probably the biggest misconception that dentists have. One of them, it's definitely in the top three for sure,
Yeah,
that
tell
I've
me.
seen, is that, oh, I'm the only one and they only want to see me and all that. And, if you put some time in, you get people moving in the right direction. I mean, I saw this past week, I saw three patients that I haven't seen in 10 years, and they've been coming to the office the entire time. And they were like, who I felt like I'd built my practice around. And I was like, oh my
Right,
gosh. Like they're like, oh, it's so good to see you. And for 10 years, they've been coming and getting work done, doing just fine. And I didn't even know it was occurring. And you would not believe that to be true if I went back 50
right.
years ago and said, oh, there's no way that's going to happen. It'll never get like that. It absolutely happens like that. It's some of it's your ego and some of it is proper training.
You think that's the greatest growth limiting factor for any doctor?
Absolutely, because you work to hone this craft and you think you're the only one that can do it this way. And it's just not true. It really isn't. And
Really, it's
it
an incredible delusional theory, isn't it?
absolutely.
But every dentist has it. I mean, that's the funny thing, man. I mean, and they are hunkered down, like there's no way. And right, it's like creating your own reality. And then, well, the team told me, and then the team doesn't want to. No, the team just doesn't want to be inconvenienced, right? But I can tell you this, I've had plenty of clients pass away, and let me tell you what happens to the patients. They just miraculously find another dentist somewhere. It's like it's not as dramatic to them as it is to the family of the doctor who passes away, right? It's like,
And then I think the other limiting side of it is some people may like one of your other doctors more than they like you,
well,
which
which is like a knife in the heart. That's
100%,
it.
100%, but it's the truth. Like,
Right.
that guy was teasing me today. He's like, "Wow, where are the younger ones? I like the younger
I
ones
like
better." He
it.
was like being
I like
funny,
it.
but he really wasn't, you
Right.
know. And it's great. I mean, it's rewarding for me to hear that because then I know, all right, they're doing okay. And like I either taught them well or they picked it up well or they figured it out on their own well. One of the three things, I don't really care which one. I'm just glad it happened.
But it takes almost like a little gray hair for you to. I think what I've noticed is that people, and again, we go back to that exact comment. I think a lot of the doctors we try to coach to get associate doctors, the truth of the matter is they sabotage that first associate or second associate and run them out the door because their ego is simply just not ready. They think they want to have it, but they're really, really not ready. They're still competing with them and still almost jealous of any staff or patient attention, right?
Everything's not going to go perfectly, and you have to handle that yourself. When it's one of the other doctors, how you handle that is the key thing. A lot of them internalize it so deeply that it's like, oh, it's ruining everything. It's one patient. You have one patient that didn't like you last month too. You just don't remember it.
Yeah.
where you were able to get through the circumstances and make it not as big a deal. And so I really do believe that once you get by some of those and you realize, like, okay, that's one, and they saw 142 people that I didn't have to see last month.
Yeah.
And like, where would you
So,
see 142 more people? Well, the answer is you couldn't.
yeah.
So
So let me ask you this. So without, without sharing, I don't want to share any, your specific numbers or whatever,
yeah,
but, let's say you're doing what, north of $20 million, right? So did you ever, I mean, if you go back, did you ever fathom that? I mean, we went back 20 years ago and we said, hey, we'd be sitting here and you'd be doing 20 plus $1 million. And do you think we even would have accepted that as a premise?
I never even believed such things were possible. I can remember sitting in a room producing 55,000 bucks a month and I was working my tail off. And again, I took pride in being a hard worker. And I heard that doctor that was Dr. Monticello that was doing $200,000 and my mind was completely blown that there's no way that's possible. Like you can't do that. And that was okay. That might have been 2002 or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
2001. And I was like, there's no way you can't do that. Like, it's just can't be. And that number that you just read being north of 20 some million, which is where we're heading again this year and growing by probably another $1 million. I mean, even having a marketing director, like the fact that I
Right.
had a marketing director for like 10 years, like, are you kidding? I don't even believe that
Yeah.
the dental offices do that. So no, I really couldn't fathom it. I never expected it to be able to have, 9 offices, and we just got our 10th last year. It's hard to imagine. And it really doesn't seem like it was such a mountain of work. Now, look, back in the old days when we did the expansion and the bottom fell out of the economy
Yeah.
and we made some mistakes. All right, that was a mountain. But since then, you start to figure some things out. You start to get a good support group. You start to get good training.
Right.
And like it all starts to just build on itself. And it really goes, I just, yeah, I wouldn't have expected we ever would be sitting here talking these numbers.
Well,
Like
let's go
5
back to
million.
that.
Yeah.
Let's go back to some ugly moments, right? Let's go back to like some gnarly, kind of like I know there was a point where you were doing a major expansion. And when we talk about major, right, it's usually it's a lot of money that we don't have. And like you said, it was what is probably was that 10 or 11?
'08 and the
Oh, wait,
'09.
yeah. I mean, it
Yeah.
was in the midst of the absolute. And by the way, all the young people listening don't know anything about the financial crisis of 08, 09, which is kind of amazing, right? That's why people repeat that. But you couldn't get any money. So what happened is the economy, the war was going on, right? There was a crash and banks didn't have money to lend and they required enormous I mean, everything was just so restricted, right? If you bought a house, sometimes you have to put 50% down, and people were walking away from their houses. And so you're in the midst of a huge renovation at this point, and probably, talk about that. We don't have to talk a lot about
Sure.
it, but I mean, so for
Yeah.
somebody's out there in a dark moment,
Yeah, I think, so our bank went under, and even like funny part, like you talked about the banks not having money, like we had a construction loan, and sometimes it was 3 weeks to get the money released because they didn't have it. And this was
right?
Bank of America. It wasn't like it was little whatever from the local
Everything.
bank.
Yeah.
This was Bank of America. And our bank went under and we had to get new financing. We lost a $2 million grant. So, we had spent money figuring we were going to get a $2 million grant because we qualified for it because we were building a green building and we had geothermal and that put us in the slot. We lost that because we had started the project before we received the final approval, which we
Uh,
didn't know was part of the approval process. So it wasn't really our own fault. It was just we just didn't know that that was the
But I mean, this was all chips in, right? Wasn't that the moment of the most all chips in you've ever
yeah.
thinking about bankruptcy, thinking about whatever, thinking about selling a home, right? I mean, it's probably the worst financial circumstances one could possibly think about, right?
Yeah, we no paycheck for 6 months. I had to sell a pickup truck to buy my kids presents for Christmas when they were like 2 and 4. And I mean, it was one of those stories. And we were 30 grand in the hole payroll. And like, we
And,
spent
and
5 years wrestling out of that $6 million mountain of debt. And then, so fast forward to that to where we are today and getting through that, it was a struggle. And we didn't compromise our ethics. We just worked hard. We corrected the overspending because we were growing. To go from 7 operatories to 27 was a huge undertaking. And, a lot of we were one of the early ones to do it. So we learned
Yeah.
a lot of lessons. A lot of people trailing us
Yeah.
consequently built the space, but then equipped it gradually as you could
Sure.
build stuff up. And, we learned a lot of lessons that we were able to pass on, which I'm really happy for everybody else that has gone after and didn't have to go through some of these mistakes because it was rough. I mean, it was rough.
Yeah.
There was some tough days, and Dr. Grant and I just held together and battled through it. And through the support down at Scheduling Institute and Practice Growth Institute, like all our friends were, rooting for us, giving us advice,
Yeah.
trying to help us and keep us positive, which it was really hard to do. I'm not going to lie. Like that
Sure.
was a big
Sure.
effort from everybody, yourself included, because I know we were just as close to not making it as we were making it. We were
Yeah.
really on that point. And,
Well, but in hindsight, would you trade that?
one of the best things that's ever happened to me because it motivated me to, one of the reasons I coach productivity is, well, if you have money, you at least have an opportunity. If you're not producing enough, you're exactly where I was. You don't have enough to do what your costs are. And that's a horrible place to be. And I don't want to see any dentist in that position. So one of the reasons made me so passionate about teaching and teaching doctors case acceptance and productivity is so they don't ever have to be in that situation.
Right.
If you can learn how to raise that productivity 10, 15% a year, year after year after year, and come to a class and it changes your whole career in life. And you won't be in that position because you'll have patience and finances to do it. And, it's a great position to be in, but I see dentists that are young dentists struggling. Oh my God, what do I do with this, that? And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
just learn how to be productive. Like
Yeah.
it's right there. You could do it. It's not that hard. It's simple steps that make huge changes.
Right.
And my heart breaks for them because I know how they feel.
Okay. So for somebody, no matter what the financial circumstances, there's really only one path. There's always only been one path. And I'm always shocked that people try to find alternative paths, to your point, right? It is like you got to produce, you got to make the money. When you hit that cap, we got to bring somebody else in, right? And it's like scaling. So it's just scaling the business, right? Which again is hard when you have a person who it might be cheap. I think that's the word.
Yeah.
Can't do math. I invest X, I get this back. So learning to get a return. I find a lot of doctors, they know how to fix teeth, but when it comes to like simple math, they seem to be challenged, right? This is a math business, right? Patients are worth a certain amount. You got to over deliver and they pay you a certain amount and it's math. So tell me a little bit about, so when you look at like for you, goals and how important was it to have those goals again to be around other people, kind of talk to me about how you've applied coaching principles into your practice as the leader of the practice too.
Yeah. I mean, it really went back to, okay, here's our bills. Okay. We generate this much per new patient. We need this many new patients. They cost us
Yeah.
$52. All right. Here's our marketing budget. How are we going to break it up? And like that math is never wrong. It never doesn't work. And it will carry you through your entire career. I just gave it to you in 20 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
Right.
need to know
Yeah.
what those pieces mean, but it's not, like you said, it's simple, basic math. And that number works year after year after year.
It's funny when I teach that math, inevitably there's always a doctor who like loves to question the math. It's my favorite thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like
You've
here we
seen
are
that. I
20
know
some
you've
years
seen
later, it's never wrong.
it. Yeah.
Like, okay, we want to get to, 24 million. We need
Right.
4,286 new patients or whatever the number is. And you back out the number, you figure it out and it gets you there. And then it's just a matter of now we have to figure out how to process them properly.
So what we're talking about is practice math, which is basically like Shark Tank math. Everyone understands Shark Tank, and it's funny that they can't figure out they have the same questions, right? So what does a customer or a patient spend with you over time? And then what do you spend to acquire them, right? I mean, but it's really funny. For some reason, dentists want to think like, oh, there's another set of math for me and I'm special. And really, there's not. It is a business at the end of the day. So tell me a little bit about some of the challenges. I mean, obviously, so you have this flagship large practice, and then you've gone into multiple locations, right? So tell me how you find that challenging or different, or what do you see here, that model shift?
Yeah, and it was, having time, go and help them where they need it. And that applies from the business management side and it applies from the patient treatment side. Because obviously, they're not the person you're working with every day. It's very easy for me to move the doctors that I work with 4 days a week and answer their questions and train them and sit in a room and watch them work and help them coach them. I just did it today.
How many doctors in your system are there?
I want to say we're at 18 right now.
Okay.
So that was a challenge. How am I going to get enough chair time out to be able to go work with somebody? And now I need to actually know what to teach them. I can't just go sit there and, all right, I can sit there, but what am I going to show you? What am I going to teach you?
Yeah,
How
make
am I
that
going
make
to,
it.
so learning how to listen to them talk, staying in the room, really just sitting with them and going over the million questions that they have because there's not a great resource for day-to-day questions, I don't feel. And it's not a TikTok thing maybe, but as it goes, a day-to-day resource would be really helpful. And there's 1,000 questions they ask. So,
Mhm.
having one of my business partners who was available to work with the office managers to be able
Mhm.
to keep those places going from that standpoint, because that's what he knew. So my goal was, okay, I know how to produce dentistry, so I'm going to go teach the doctors and work with the team. And with the division of labor was a key point that allowed us to be successful because Dr. Grant goes to a couple of them, I go to a couple of them. We got a new doctor. I'm going to spend, 2 afternoons a week with you in the beginning. You're going to come shadow me in the main practice and just watch me work in that office and see just a different thing because you don't even know what we do exists if you don't come to our big office and
Right,
watch how it
right.
goes because it doesn't work that way in a small office because the systems aren't there yet.
So years ago, when I brought in Robert Cialdini to start teaching that, I still think that's the best foundation. What do you think? Like when you really stop and go, like if you want to take a person who's completely void of personality and is an introvert, and we got to get them. I think the challenge you and I have is that dentists come in all kinds of different shapes and sizes. And yes, you have some highly skilled communicators, but for the most part, you're making a living just staring in someone's mouth. So, right, this is that patient, that communication with the patient is still critical.
It is. I think it's the biggest void in the profession, besides maybe the business management void. I think the other biggest void is the communication void because, dentists, they have a craft. They want to talk about the craft and all that stuff. And patients, that means nothing to them. They don't understand it. They don't value it. You heard me talk earlier about people coming to see my dad who's wearing one glove. Well, that's because they valued the relationship so much that they were willing to overlook that. And that's hard to believe that people would do that, but they would line up and his schedule was always full. And so
We trusted him.
100% because they knew he cared and they knew he was going to do right by them. But that was from his communication because he was the Michael Jordan of communication. I mean, he
Yeah.
could get people relate to people better than anybody I've ever met. And he could make it fun. And so that void needs to be filled. And like Cialdini teaches you those principles of influence, he actually gets you to think about what you're saying a little bit so that you craft it some and you actually put some focus to it. You put so much focus on the dentistry and you put zero focus on the relationship communication
Yeah.
part, and it's out of balance.
Totally. So what we're talking about is just flipping your mindset. And Lance and I teach a lot of people how to communicate. And that is, we get too technical, period. Patients don't want to be the doctor. It's like when your car mechanic starts describing to you what they're going to do. You're like, I don't even know what that is. But let's just tell me how much and when I can get my car back and we're good. But we want to complicate it. That's for sure.
Yeah, and same thing, listening to you all these years, like you're a fantastic communicator, like one of your greatest skills. So when you listen to someone that knows how to communicate, you naturally start to pick that up and realize how important that is because, when you're in an audience, you're watching the communication happen and you can
Yeah.
see the send and you can see the receive because you're not involved in the conversation. You're a spectator. And it's so valuable, like all these years in this room, it's not so much about the questions I asked, it's about how you and somebody else answered a question.
Yeah.
What I learned from because my mind was quiet because I wasn't thinking of anything. I'm just taking
Right.
it in. And there's not a lot of places where you can get and do that where it's so meaningful. Some of the top people in the whole US, like talking about their business, their job, their life, their day, like
Yeah.
I get to hear it all. I got to hear how it all works from some of the top people in the world and watch you give them advice and watch what it does in their life and the whole thing. Because you're a spectator, when you're in the chair, your mind, it's hard to slow your mind down
Right.
to be able to do
So
that.
So I think a little bit about what Lance is saying is like for he and I over the last 20 years, I've brought in experts from college football coaches to politicians to preachers to I always tried to bring in anyone who was in the people business and then we would apply it to dentistry. And so, for anyone listening, the book is called The Principles of Influence. You can pick it up. It's Robert Cialdini. He's one of the foremost researchers of how to influence a person and for a win win arrangement. Certainly, you can do it not, but you should. A lot of the research that we've applied over the years has been his research, right? So, to get actual doctor to be or an office. I mean, if you really think about it, all of your offices are just applying those principles to human beings that just keep coming in, which creates, it's funny that I still think my title works well. Patient conversion and then compliance, right? That was what all my events were, conversion and compliance, and then I think I had conversion and compliance. I just need to go back to you and I need to do conversion and compliance 5 and then do 6 like Rocky. We just keep that thing going because I agree with you. That's what they need. I was thinking about that the other day is like get them to not reject you, but then more importantly, right, get them to actually do what you say.
Right. I mean, otherwise, I don't care how good you are. You could be the most skilled clinician in the world. You're going to underproduce and you're going to get frustrated. You're not going to meet your goals. You're going to be
Right.
behind and you can't understand it because you're like, but I can do this. This crown's magnificent. It
So
doesn't matter.
So let me ask you this. So your
Relative.
dad says to you, "Hey, I don't know if this profession doesn't change, it might not work." What's your advice to if a young person came to you today and said, "Hey, I think I want to be a dentist." What might you say to them?
I think it's terrific because my view of it is you get to control your future way more than a lot of professions, way, way more.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
okay, we were at, when I started that practice was at $600,000 and we're cracking 20 plus million. Like,
crazy.
I'm not the smartest man in the world. I'm not the most brilliant. I'm not the most skilled. I've got a work ethic. I was coachable and I surrounded myself with other people with some similar processes and off we went. So I think it's a great profession. You need to like people. I think if you
Yeah.
don't like people, you're going to struggle. But healthcare people tend to like it unless they just want to be some type of surgeon where they're working on people asleep. And the big thing that I think everybody misses that I tell everybody, I'm like, we're one of the few professions that works on people that are awake. The relationship is way more important in what we do. So if you enjoy people, and you have a little bit of work ethic, you can write your own ticket. I get that the
Yeah,
desk and all this, it doesn't matter to me. Like learn how to get people to trust you, learn how to be good at your craft and learn how to talk and you can just take off. I don't care who you are.
and at an elementary level, everybody's got a mouthful of teeth, right? I mean, it is like that's the one thing. And there's not a lot of places where it's become acceptable just to lose all your teeth and call it a day, right? I mean, it's just not. And the vanity scale now is going through the roof of all the pictures and social media. So everybody who, used to just have terrible looking teeth, I mean, right? People are hungry for white teeth and
This little movement on the screen on your screen, that has caused dentistry to explode
yeah, yeah.
because people can go like that on their pictures. You can't imagine the work I get from that thing right there.
Somebody brings the picture like, horrified.
Mm-hmm. All day long. All day.
So if you guys are listening to this and it's something that you're interested in, we do have some boot camps for doctors. So you can call our office and, Lance and I do a boot camp. I think we have one coming up in August. That's certainly an option for somebody. So tell me a little bit about, do you mind talking a little bit about the power of all these tests we've done over the years? If it was Colby, Strength Finder, Print, how do you think self-awareness has played into your growth as a doctor? And
If I didn't get it, it would have sunk my ship. If
mm,
I didn't realize that I was a people person, that I was not the business management type, can I run the
mm,
business? Yes, but do I want to go and sit down with an employee and go through all that stuff? I was not good at it. I could do it, I've done it, but I didn't know that about myself. I didn't know that peace and harmony were my number one driver. But
crazy.
when you look back at my life, it's clear as a bell. And had I not figured some of that stuff out and helped surround myself with people that could fill in the gaps that I was not strong at versus me making mistakes in those gaps would have hampered my career by 50%.
Do you think, but go back, like I grew up kind of like that. My dad could do everything. And so, somewhere along the way, I got it. You got it. If you wouldn't have gotten that, that would have been the greatest. I mean, you just wallow in frustration. So basically, you figured out through that your strength is your people skills, your production, and not to be and to delegate the administrative functions to somebody with a higher talent level. That was a big shift, right? Because early days, you did it all.
100%. And you could make it work on a small scale. Your voids don't get called out too much, but small scale, you're not making any money
Yeah.
either. So you have to do it. But like as you start to move even a little bit, you need the help of the people around you. And if you don't know what you should hang on to and what you should let go of, even in your relationship at home with your
Yeah.
spouse, your kids, like my wife is the opposite of me. And I know if I'm going to talk to her, I've got to give her details. And she knows when she's going to talk to me, she's got to cut those details down. She knows my Colby. She needs to minimize it. And I'm like, I say it all the time. What do you need me to do? And she's like, go here and do this. Perfect. And I'm happy. I don't need a long explanation. And like, but we didn't, we sat down in a room together and learned about one another,
Right.
and it helped us communicate so much better. And not in a million years would I have figured that out on my own. I mean, come on. I just wouldn't have.
Oh, but I think that's, and one of the things for everybody listening, what we're talking about is this idea of constantly, it's like opening up a new door and freeing yourself up. And so many people just get mired in, you're doing everything mediocre. It's not even like you're doing it well. It's like you got to practice for 10 years. The practice is collecting 1 million too, and you're still just, like you gotta just be able to, it's hard to accept that you're just not doing things the way they need to be done. And you got to get rid of something and stick to one. I mean, and that's, oh man, some people just go to the grave with that, which is horrible.
Yeah. I mean, I figured out I'm a coach. I'd love to do it. If I kind of had that idea, but once it gets sort of verified and you get to see it, and then you really sit behind it and you work on what you're good at, and it just,
Right.
I mean, these doctors are
So
doing well.
let's talk about that. So let's talk about why a doctor should have a coach, in your opinion, right? Like what I know a lot of people, I always say that the best clients are the clients that were in sports because they are used to coaches. And so they forgot that they actually respond well to coaches, right? You see them, they come in, they're like, oh, this is it. I got it. I'll be back. I'll execute. And it's just, they need that little stimulus, right? And then there's others that are like, awkward about it sometimes. But what do you think the importance of a doctor, getting coached and taking that time to get away from their practice, right? Which is really, I think, those days away, which is like the first time they come, they're having like convulsions with that they're, I'm losing so much money today. It's like, but
Well,
they're trapped, right?
yeah, and even those times when we were, just in a buried hole, we still made time to come away with coaching, because if we didn't clear our head, we wouldn't have been able to manage what was in front of us. And also, we wouldn't have learned the tools to manage what was in
Right.
front of us, because you can't do that under that environment. And you think, oh my gosh, I gave up 15,000 in production today. Like, how are we going to do that? If you're coachable and you go to an event and you come back, that 15,000 means nothing. You should make that 7 times over,
Yeah.
but and my whole career that's going on. Here I am, 20 plus years. I'm still
Right.
doing things. I'm still in the room, getting
Sure.
coached on a yearly basis for 20 plus years. And look, I've been around great coaches. I've been around you. I've been around all these people. I've had so fortunate. I've had
Yeah.
tremendous coaches and leaders, but you just don't know it. And
Why do you think that people, they say that, like, if you took the population, let's say, and even if you took all of dentistry, the number of people that are really getting quality coaching is like it's almost like, I think they say it's like sub 2%, which is pretty sad.
humility, I think, is a big problem when people don't seek it because they're not humble. And I think it's a step on your ego to go somewhere and realize you don't know something. Like, it's different if you're going to go learn some procedure you don't know how to do. You know you don't know how to do it. So your mind is open there. But this stuff about like how you're talking to people and how you're going to present your
Yeah.
cases, like you believe that humility is a lacking quality. And I've learned, a long time. I'm gonna be better tomorrow than I
Yeah.
was today, because I'm gonna learn from today and be better tomorrow. And then the day after that, I'm gonna have to learn something and try to be better that next day. And that's how my life has gone. And I mean, it's a hill we'll never get to the top of, but like you need that help and you have to be willing to take it. And that's, I think, a big problem. People
Good.
want to have all the answers. And look, you just don't.
How good was that Dunning-Kruger? Did you like that?
I did because like it's, I'm arguing with a young dentist and they're like, well, I want to do this. They said this is going to work. And I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah,
For
it's
you
not.
guys listening, the Dunning-Kruger effect is this effect where when you really don't know a lot, it's funny, like you really don't have the experience, but and you'll see this with your kids, you'll see this with young people, certainly, right? I mean, that people and they have this, it's a natural thing that occurs, which is that they will try to present more knowledgeable than they are. And it's a theory, right? It's Dunning-Kruger theory. And like and the evidence, and there's no rationale for it, but people actually do this more than are humble and want to get coached, meaning that they just want to act like they know something when like, so again, if you look at your bank account, there's no money in there. I'm going to tell you right now that you are not as good as you think you are, right? It's like, and even sometimes the evidence is so clear, or your marriage is falling apart, or your kids don't like you, or whatever, and that person is just doubling down on the same behavior. So I don't know. I think it's I only found that a couple of years ago, right? I wish I would have had it years ago. I think I would.
Yeah, it really it's eye-opening and it starts you and basically that's a lesson in humility. You think you're
Yeah,
smart, you're really not. So then as soon as you realize you're not, you start to grow. Like it's,
yeah.
starts out real high, you think you know everything, then you realize you don't. And then once you realize you don't, you start to go on the uphill
Yeah.
to
You can cut that
progress.
out just by being humble and being a good student and putting
Yeah.
your ego aside, right? So I
Yeah.
think that's funny. Like people are always like me, they're like, oh, I'm like, listen, I've been coached my whole life. I coach people, but I also have to get coached because I can't, it happens to every one of us. Your perspective gets changed. Well, listen, thank you so much for taking time. I know you're a busy guy. So any closing thoughts, anything you want to
Yeah,
say to
I
folks that
I
might be
think
listening?
the future's bright, but you have to realize that if you don't feel that way, it's just because of what you don't know. And there's answers out there, and you just have to find them and be willing to accept them and try them and put the effort in.
What do you think about this CE obsession versus the kind of coaching that will really grow your business? Do you think there's a,
It's funny, most of my presentation in that Productive Dentist Academy is about verbal conversation. It is not about clinical work.
yeah,
And the people go up 10 to 30% after the class, and not all on my shoulders, there's other people there too. I just find it funny that it's not about how to give a needle, how to do this. Yes, that all matters. It all
yes,
matters. And but that is easy to get. You can go online and pick that stuff up. This is what nobody's teaching, and but it's the piece you need the most. And you need to go find it and you need to do it. And then once you realize, like I've watched just the success of people that were in that room that I was teaching
yeah,
10 years ago, and now they have four offices and they're doing this and they're, their lives completely different. And they were that struggling person who couldn't figure out how to
mhm.
make ends meet and how were they going to pay for it? And oh my gosh, their time out. Like it's out there. Everybody is one coach away from success.
So closing question, 20 plus million is, do you have more freedom today than you had in those early days? And how dramatic is that freedom and what does that mean to you? Right. I mean,
It's the freedom of your mind and that I can do what I want. We just bought a property, renovated it right down the street and paid for it as we went. And, like this afternoon, I used to work Mondays till 8 o'clock, except during football season. Then I would leave for football, come back and work 2 more hours. And I don't do that anymore.
yeah.
Here I am able to do this because I don't have Monday afternoon scheduled anymore. And, that's same for my
Taking more vacations, taking more time off, getting the,
yeah, and being able to go away, like everybody, a lot of people can take a vacation, but to actually truly take a vacation because you're not worried about how you're going to pay
right.
for it. Oh my gosh, where's this going to go? And the fact that I planned this vacation a year ago, put the money aside along the way, so then when it came time to make the vacation, there was no thought, no stress, no worry, because of the principles I've learned that you have taught me on how to do it and to create
Yeah.
a vacation account. Like all those tools that I picked up make my
Totally.
life so easy that I enjoy it so much more. Like I'll put freedom and enjoyment in that same word. And being coached and learning and growing has enabled me so much freedom and enjoyment in life that I can focus on the things that I really enjoy. And I still love to get in there and get my hands wet, probably more than I probably should, but that's just my nature. But I still have so much freedom and time to do things that are meaningful. And I hope somebody listens to this today and can change their career, because I'm telling you, you're just a coach away from it. That's it.
Well, listen, hey, thank you so much. That was super, super valuable. Appreciate the time. Thanks for hopping on with us.
It was my pleasure. Thank you as always.
Appreciate it, Lance.
Yep, you're welcome. Have a great day.